The implication of clean, clear knowledge is of fantastic importance. Clean, clear knowledge is as important to health in the 21st century as clean, clear water was in the 19th century. Citizens have a right to clean, clear knowledge. And remember, not all knowledge that is clear is necessarily clean. And as we think of the delivery of clean, clear water in the 19th century, it was delivered by the organised efforts of society. And that's the definition of a public health service. And I believe that the delivery of clean, clear knowledge to citizens and patients is a public health service. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let me ask you some questions. I'll ask some cancer questions, and I'll ask him about Bristol, because Chris has done this fantastic work on cancer knowledge during his career. So who's responsible for what a man in Clifton knows about PSA testing? Who's responsible for what a GP trainee in Ashton Downs knows about referral to hospital for hoarseness? Who's responsible for what a paediatric registrar knows about neuroblastoma in childhood? These are important questions. These are knowledge questions. Someone should be responsible for these things. So what I've been involved with over the years, working with Chris and Ian Chalmers and others, is the production of clean, clear knowledge. Now, one way to think of this is to think of the water supply. So we start off with a reservoir, and Chris's textbook on rare cancers is a reservoir. It's where all the knowledge is collected. Now, the thing about a reservoir is that you need it for times of drought. But there's another very important factor to a reservoir, and I don't know if you know what it is. A reservoir lets the rubbish sink to the bottom. If, for example, a sheep dies and rolls into the reservoir where it gets the water for Bristol, then it doesn't matter, because the water just stays there. And I often think this is like the reservoir of knowledge. We don't need to act on the latest randomized controlled trial. In fact, we shouldn't, because the significant proportion of research is invalidated within a year. Now, when the water leaves the reservoir, what happens next? It's filtered. And filtration is analogous to the preparation of a systematic review. Again, Chris had to develop particular types of filtration for very rare cancers, because there weren't randomized controlled trials. But again, the same principle. Where is all the evidence? What is good and not good? And how do we synthesize that for clinicians and patients? So, we have a reservoir of knowledge, then we filter it. Then we have to deliver it to the hospital or the health centre or the home. And that's through the internet. The internet is the radical transformer of the 21st century. An electrician came to my house this morning. I just said to my wife, no, you can only get smartphones now. It's happened. Some of you, the middle class, are often snooty about smartphones, but they have decided, by they I don't mean government, I mean Nokia and Vodafone. This is the revolution in healthcare will come out of the barrel of the smartphone. So but that's for citizens. But what's it like in the hospital ward? You see, the internet gets the knowledge to the hospital or the health centre, but what gets it into the consultation? Well, there's two aspects of that. One is we can give it to patients to read beforehand, and one of the things that Chris did very early on was give patients recordings of their consultation, and of course you can record the whole consultation on this. But we need to think of ways in which we give people the best knowledge before they come. My estimate is that the health service sends out 1.5 billion letters a year, and I don't think I've seen a letter that's had good knowledge in it. So of course patients go and look up Google. They'll still go and look up Google even if you give them the knowledge, but we have to compete with the internet. We have to make sure it's there. And the other thing about getting knowledge onto the 5th floor of Bristol Royal Infirmary, it's similar to the question, how do you get water onto the 5th floor of Bristol Royal Infirmary? I can't really remember if Bristol has 5 floors. I did my diploma in public health in Bristol, so I can picture the old Victorian front. But how does water get on the 5th floor? The answer is because of pressure. in this case a water tank somewhere above your head. And the pressure to get the right cancer knowledge to the right place has to come from someone I call the Chief Knowledge Officer. Now this is not a job, it's a role. Someone in the cancer team or the hospital, if it's all of knowledge, not just cancer knowledge, someone responsible for making sure the knowledge is delivered where and when it is needed. It's a role, not a job. People should accept responsibility for it. They will need support, of course, and that support can come from librarians. Are librarians far too valuable to spend all of their time in the library? We need to get them out delivering knowledge. Now what I've learned over the years from Chris is that the knowledge about rare diseases is even more important than knowledge about common disease. And of course here, with rare diseases, this is where patients really come into their own. The patient is the manager of knowledge. Patients only have one disease usually. Patients have more time than clinicians, so we have to treat the patient as a partner in the knowledge world. So these are what I've learned from working with colleagues like Chris. That knowledge is all around us in books. I produced a little book myself called Better Doctors, Better Patients, Better Decisions. And this is saying that the 21st century is the century in which knowledge is the most important resource, not money. The 21st century is the century of the patient, whereas the 20th century was the century of the doctor. So I'm sorry I can't be with you today. I wish Chris well. I wish all of you well, and remember, clean, clear knowledge is as important to health as clean, clear water.